I'm Richard Taylor. It's the 14th of December 2017 and I'm here on Arbury Road in North Cambridge, and I'm just coming out to a meeting of Cambridge's North Area Committee. That's my most local level of government. It's where my local city and county councillors meet, so I feel that I should come along and see what they're up to. This evening on their agenda they have the opportunity to set the local policing priorities and hold the police to account for the priorities which they set at the last meeting. There's also a presentation from the County Council's cycling team on the new bridge and associated cycleways. And there's an environmental improvement agenda item as well. So I'm hoping to push on with a lot of things that I've raised at previous meetings. I'm hoping there'll be an update on a garden walk and the supported mental health accommodation, supported accommodation there for those with mental health needs. On the environmental improvements, I'm hoping to talk about or encourage them to replace some of the trees which they have planted on the riverside. And I think the most important thing is the state of dangerous driving and general disorder in the Fen Road area. And I also want to raise the lack of transparency and the number of private and secret meetings which have been taking place and are planned to take place over highways improvement schemes, particularly the remodelling of Milton Road and other schemes in the area. So, I'm almost there.
Good evening everybody and welcome to the North Area Committee. I've got apologies received from Councillor Smart. Okay, I'm going to do some housekeeping first. If there's a fire, there's going to be no fire alarm, but if there happens to be, that's the fire exit, please, if everyone could leave through that door. The toilets go down this corridor and turn left, and you'll find all the toilets down there. Lovely. So, I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting. Spare copies of the agenda and related reports are available at the back of the room. Well, it's just here actually. Please help yourself. My name is Councillor Jerry Bird and I'm the chair of this meeting. Along with the North Area City Ward councillors, whom I will ask now everybody to introduce themselves. Can I start with you, Mike?
Yep, I'm Michael Jones, I represent Arbury and I'm Vice Chair of North Area.
Councillor Kevin Price, I'm Councillor for King's Head.
This work, hello. Elisa Mischini, I'm the County Councillor for King's Edges.
Patrick Shield, Albury City Councillor.
Marjorie Abbott, East Chesterton City Councillor.
Mike Sargent, West Chesterton City Councillor.
Peter Saris, East Chesterton.
Peter Saris, East Chesterton City Councillor.
Karina O'Reilly, Albury City Councillor.
Oh, there it is. Jocelyn Scott, County Councillor for Arbury.
David Tunnicliffe, City Councillor for West Chesterton.
Ian Manning, County Councillor for the County Division of Chesterton.
Thank you. County councillors are permitted to take part in the discussion on all agenda items, but are only permitted to formally vote on the police and safer neighbourhood items. Can I remind councillors, officers and members of the public to turn off their mobile phones or put them on silent? As we're not expecting a fire alarm test, as I've said, upon hearing a continuous ring of a bell, please allow council officers and follow council officers and make your way out of the building. Can I remind all those present of the importance of using the microphones at all times when speaking? Please speak close to and clearly in the microphone, and also remember to switch your microphones off when you've finished speaking and turn them on when you have to speak. I would encourage any members of the public having difficulty hearing the discussion to raise their hands or alert an officer. hearing loop is available within the room, and again, I would encourage you to alert an officer if you require assistance with it. Members of the public may address the committee under the open forum section. This is an overall time limit for this section of the agenda for 30 minutes. Whilst there is no time limit for each questioner, I would ask that you keep your comments short and concise. For the comfort of councillors, officers and the public, I will break during the proceedings. Mince pies and non-alcoholic mulled wine have been provided. During the meeting, have your say cards will also be handed out. We welcome your feedback. So could you complete the cards on the left table. Okay, filming and recording of the committee meetings. The key points: anyone can record, film, tweet, blog, etc. and no notice or permission from the chair or committee is required. The chair can request that those filming proceedings respect that some members of the public may wish not to be filmed, but we cannot require it nor stop them from filming if they refuse. The chair can still stop recording if it disrupts proceedings. Filming is not permitted when the meeting is adjourned. Okay, do we have any declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. Okay, minutes from the last meeting. Are there any matters arising from the minutes?
There's a correction, actually.
Can you turn your mic on, please?
That's a good idea. Thank you. Yes, there is really a correction to the minutes, and I've circulated a document that actually sets out what the realities are. Apparently there's somebody who imagined that I had said that the North Area Committee would do Librel Highways improvements. As the minutes make it very clear and accurately so, and I commend Emily for this, it was not I that suggested that North Area Committee would submit any LHI, so it's astonishing to me and somewhat bewildering that it should have been tweeted and twittered and twatted that I had actually made that contention, which I had never made. However, on the action point, I think it may be better phrased. Councillor Scutt to investigate proposing an LHI bid and investigate the possibility of funds being allocated for locally led highway improvements at Chisholm Road from the Highways and Community Infrastructure budget. So I do request the minutes be amended to that effect. And then on item 3 of the open forum, the minutes do require amendment. It states there that I made an apology in relation to a lapse in a particular consultation relating to residents' parking. The apology I made was on behalf of the County Council, as invitations had not been sent out. I note that Hurst Park Estate is within the Chesterton division. I represent Arbury Division, so my apology on behalf of the County Council was expressed in relation to Arbury Division and those residents for whom I have responsibility. Councillor Manning on my left represents Chesterton and was County Councillor for that division at the relevant time, that is when the informal consultation was being arranged and was held well after May 2007, namely in August of 2017, and thus he is responsible to and for Hurst Park Avenue residents, and if he wishes to apologise in that regard, that's a matter for him, but my apology was in relation to the County Council and my residents who are within the Arbury division of that part that is bordered by Gilbert Road, Carlton Way, Milton Road and Ashland Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more matters arising? Sorry. Councillor Sargent?
We'll try.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 12, I have taken up the issue of the advertising banners at Student Castle. Actually not Student Castle, but Student Castle. and planning enforcement team are looking into that.
Thank you. Any others?
You're right.
Members to position microphone so it's about that far from their lips and in front, because in this hall I'm having a bit of a struggle. So much closer and talk straight to the microphone.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Manning?
I'll make this brief. I wasn't the county councillor for the division of Chesterton when the informal consultation was being arranged, because the county division of Chesterton didn't exist at that time. It would be quite hard for me to do that.
The relevant meeting was held in August 2017 and was advertised prior to that date and well after May 2017, when Chesterton division existed and when Councillor Manning had been elected to that division. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, otherwise, can I sign these minutes, please? Okay, lovely, thank you. Okay, we're coming on now to the open forum. I will say that you will get 30 minutes, as we said, on the agenda. As we have a really heavy agenda. Oh, sorry. The action sheet, sorry, I forgot that. I was getting ahead of myself. Okay, here we go. The first one is on page 15, agenda item 4, 14-26. Councillor Manning, the route opposite Green End, Co-op Green End Road, causing trip hazards.
Yeah, sure, that's progressing, Chair. As you'll notice, some of the trees have actually gone, so it's ongoing, so we need to leave it on until it's complete.
Okay, and I've had an update on that one, that the work will be starting in February down Green End Road. Okay, thank you. The next one is 15-4, and that's Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm still waiting for the double yellow lines to be painted. I would add that I've had a resident bring me a couple of photographs this evening of the area. There appears to be one of the large concrete borders that is used to keep cars or vehicles from going on that area. That I'm not sure who it was, Superman, from looking at the size of the concrete wall, but that's been removed and lying away, and some other sort of red plastic safety fencing appears to have been strewn around, which I will chase up in the morning.
Thank you. Okay, the next one on page 16 is 16-19, and that's the Jackie Hanson, and I think, Mike, you've got some information on it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's nothing particularly further to add. The situation is still the same as on page 17, in fact, the update from the 22nd of June 2017. So there will be discussion, but they're still subject to the outcome of the community centre review. By all means, keep it on the action list. Perhaps there'll be something to report when the community centre review has sort of come to fruition.
Thank you. Okay, the next one on page 17, 16-43. And this one, Councillor Scott, I think you're working on this. Milton Road pavement and road surfaces in need of repair.
My understanding is that the work has been undertaken, but I'll undertake to go up and have a site view of the parts of the road that were to be repaired, because I have had word from residents that the work has been undertaken, but there were some queries that they had, so that's what I will undertake to do for the next meeting.
Thank you. The next one is 16-43, Councillor Scott. Ex-councillor, was that? Yeah.
The query was just raised in relation to 16/43, as to whether I should be taking responsibility for this. I'm very happy to hand responsibility over to Councillors Tunnicliffe and Manning if they wish to follow it up. I believe I was following it up because it was originally in my division, and then as a consequence of the local liaison forum and the Greater Cambridge Partnership being involved in that road, I undertook to check what was exactly was happening. So, but I'm happy to hand the responsibility to others. I'm not desperate to hand on to the responsibility. I mean, I'm very happy to keep abreast of what's going on in Milton Road because of that it's relevant to the whole length. But coming to 1643, good news on this one. Originally, the county officers advised me that improvements to the bit of Arbury Road which was in question would not be taking place because the cycleway was not advanced to that area yet. But I have since heard from them that they will, within the context of the cycleway inclusion to Arbury Road, fix the bit of Arbury Road that is the part in question. It's a dip outside several residents' homes, and when it catches water and then the water turns to ice, it's extremely dangerous. So they've said they'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one is 16-49. Councillor Todd-Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there was a meeting of all chairs and vice chairs of area committees at which this issue, particularly the provision of defibrillators at area committees, was discussed. And there's still, rather frustratingly, some sort of headway still to make on this. So you have to leave it at me, and I'll try and report back to the next North Area Committee, hopefully with a more sort of positive outcome. But it is still very much in mind of all the chairs and vice chairs of area committees to try and get some progress on this.
Thank you. Okay, on page 19, 16-49. Councillor Manning.
I believe that's been replaced.
So we take it off?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is 16-49. Councillor Scott.
Now this is Councillor Price did an update on this one over the page. So perhaps Councillor Price would prefer to answer it. I mean,
Yes, Chair. And well, I think from the last report, the work was supposed to have been completed by the 30th of June. I've had no information since then as to whether that has been or hasn't been done. Sorry, when I read through these, I just looked for the ones with my name on, and I took no notice of that. I will chase that one up again.
Could I just add something to this about the lighting? There was a resolution at the County Council at the last meeting last Tuesday, which unfortunately was defeated by the Conservative group on the council. It was supported by, it was put by an independent, and there were two seconders effectively, Labor and Liberal Democrats, and we both supported it. And it was to ask that there's £300,000 that Balfour Beatty is actually paid as fines, effectively, for the inadequacy of their work. And what the resolution asked was that £300,000 be able to be used for lighting, to actually improve the lighting in various parts of the city and the county areas. But it was defeated. But the reason I'm speaking at this time is to say that if people do have problems with lighting, then please get in touch with relevant councillors, and also it would be worthwhile contacting the council itself, because what the county officers are saying is that Balfour Beatty has massively improved in their performance and that there are currently no real problems. So it would be as well to ensure that we do advise the county officers if there are problems. I'm not anticipating that there are, but if there are, I think we need to let them know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Price, shall we put your name on this one now?
Yes, Chair, why not?
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one is 1649. Councillor Todd Jones.
Yes, I can report a successful outcome. The bus stop in question is ablaze with light, and this can now be taken off the list.
Great, thank you. Okay, and the next one is 1650. And Councillor Austin.
The position on this is the
Microphone.
apologies. The position on this was that at the time, last time, this concern about the lack of interest through 101. Sounds like a lot of it was due to sort of the pressure and holidays at the time, and what I agreed to do was to leave it for some time and go back to it at a later date, and my plan is to do that early in the new year.
Okay, thank you very much. Page 21, it's 16-50, and that's Councillor Todd Jones.
Yeah, well that's reference really to the police item coming up later in the agenda in terms of the breakdown of figures. I think there'll be a further explanation of that on the agenda item. Okay, thanks.
Okay, the next one is 1650. Councillor O'Reilly.
Yeah, unless Councillor Manning has anything that he wants to add to this, because I think he did suggest that he was going to report back on the anonymity of submissions to the forms on the website. I think this one can be removed. I think the updates there are quite sufficient.
Thank you very much. And the next one is 1650. Councillor Todd Jones. Page
22, there's 216.
Yes, I mean there's a lot of ongoing issues in the Arbury area, and again really I want to discuss it a bit further when we come to the policing item and the priority setting. As far as I'm aware, with specific reference to Bermuda Flats, the issue is not as significant as it was when first being discussed in the summer. And I'm going to suggest later on in the meeting when we get to the policing item that there should be a local police priority elsewhere rather than Bermuda Flats. But obviously we're always aware that the police maintain a profile in all the areas that they're aware of where there are potential problems, and there's a cycle of those issues. So that I'm sure Bermuda Flats will continue to be in that arrangement, but I'm going to talk further about policing issues in Arbury later on.
So do you want this left on then?
I would suggest, I think that can come off for the time being. You can always raise it again if it becomes a significant issue.
Okay, thank you very much. The next one again is 17-17, Councillor Todd Jones.
Again. Yes, this item is really being progressed mainly with Councillor Scott, I think. I don't know if you want to add anything.
I will just confirm that Mrs. Brundbland for the Histon Road Area Residents Association has submitted an LHI bid, and we haven't yet heard back because the officers are still doing their research on all the LHI bids, but it's in.
So, would you like Councillor
That needs to stay on, I think, because that's
Yeah.
an ongoing LHI bid, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, lovely. Okay, page 23, we've got 17-17, Councillor Scott.
Thank you. Yes, I will have to report back on this at the next meeting because there's no information yet being provided to me by the officers as to that part of French's Road being progressed. It is on the list, but they haven't yet advised me that it's going to commence.
Okay, lovely, thank you. 17-17, Councillor Chilly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I am very pleased to report that the LHI bid in question has been submitted. We await confirmation of progress, and I will lead that on and I will tell you how it goes.
Lovely, thank you. And again, 17-17, Councillor Saris.
Thank you, Chair. I raised the issue with the Executive Councillor immediately after the meeting when this came up. She was not aware of any specific risk assessments having been undertaken, but she said she would check with officers to make sure that waste was not being left out for so long a period as to pose a threat to public health. She wasn't aware that it had been.
So, Councillor Saris, would you like me to leave it on or take it off? Okay, lovely, thank you. Okay, the next one, page 24, 17-25. Councillor Scott?
Both of these 1725 have been addressed and they're in hand, and I'm in consultation with Lillian Brundblad in relation to both. The first one, we'll put in an LHI bid at the next round, and I will go with her to do a site visit to see exactly what it is that we want to put in as the LHI bid. And then as to the second one on that page, I'm actually consulting to discover what we can do about this parking provision and who it is that we need to be in communication with to take action. And yes, I believe I'll refer to them on this.
Thank you. Okay, 17-25, Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Chair. I've certainly been in correspondence with Sergeant Music, and it was his view at some stage that things had improved. I did provide additional information that residents had provided to me about the issue, and went back to him on that. It's still his view at the moment that it is a lot better than it was. Just a note on that, it was actually spreading, so we were getting the issue in Elizabeth Way as well, so it was really covering the whole of the north of the city, down Milton Road, etc. And I'm sure we'll discuss this amongst other matters when we get to the police priorities.
Okay, thank you very much. 17-25, Councillor Richards is not here tonight, she's not well. Could you speak up, Councillor Scott?
Oh, yeah, and my Councillor...
I will actually, because I was at the last meeting.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a meeting on, mainly on residents parking with the Garden Walk Residents Association. Very pleased to inform that the situation has been very much improved. This was mainly in respect of what was metropolitan housing. It's now the responsibility of Sanctuary. In the past, they had, I think it was one or perhaps two members of staff on site, but they were allowed to sleep during the night. Sanctuary now have two members of staff on site who were awake all night. So our understanding is, unless anybody's heard to the contrary, that this is very much improved and it can be removed from the list.
Lovely, thank you very much. 17-26, Councillor Manning.
So, as a result of a number of meetings, this is about the parking zones 5 and 10, and eventually had a meeting with Councillor Scott and Councillor Richardson officers, and we agreed to split the schemes up, so there's now effectively a zone 5, a zone 10A and 10B, 10A being Councillor Scott's ward, and 10B being in my ward, because I wouldn't want to have any doubt about who's responsible for what in which ward, as we heard earlier. But essentially the decision is on 10B, which is the Hurst Park estate. That will not go ahead for now, to be reevaluated at a later point. I am still talking to the residents of Zone 5, which is the, keeps getting referred to as a triangle, but someone keeps pointing to me as actually a regular rhomboid. And I'm still talking to those residents about whether they go ahead with the proposals they've got, whether we're going to, I need to make a decision on by January the 12th. I don't know if Councillor Scott wants to update on what is now effectively Zone 10A, because I don't know anything about that because it's not in my division.
I actually have addressed this in the page that's been distributed, but the area that is Gilbert Road, Carlton Way, Ashton Road and Milton Road, that area, we had a very valuable workshop which many residents attended, and it does appear that a majority of residents do want some action in relation to residents parking, and so we'll further consult with the officers, and there will then be consultation with residents. And I do emphasise here that it's up to the residents if they want to have residents parking or not. It's not up to the county councillors to make any decision on that. All that we do is endeavour to progress the wishes of the residents.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Councillor Sandra?
Just complete, in Councillor Richard's absence, she's looking after the Victoria parking scheme, which is, as you head up Victoria Road, the streets to the right from Corona Road up to Garden Walk. She's doing a lot of work at the moment because some of the streets have been heavily impacted by proposals for parking bays, and she's trying to squeeze a few more parking bays into the streets. So it's not in a state where she's happy to move it forward. Particular streets are much debated, and it's not clear yet whether she will be going ahead with consultation or not.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're coming to the open forum now. Right, we have a really heavy agenda tonight, so I'm going to be really strict with the time. There'll be 30 minutes. Any questions that are not answered by the time we come to the end, we'll make sure that each councillor receives your question. But if I look through the questions as we're going along and I notice something's for the police, are you happy for me to keep that until we come to the police section and so on? Okay, lovely. Okay, so the first one I've got is Cab Davidson.
I've put in two. I'll start with the easy one. Everywhere else I've lived in a lot of places in the British Isles, there are grit bins, and you can go and get some grit and scatch it in front of the old people's houses to stop them falling over. There is one in King's Headless, and years ago there was a fight between the city and the county, both in desperate hurry to disown it and insist it wasn't theirs. It was in the recycling point. The recycling point has been closed down because nobody acknowledges it's theirs. It's still there, and it's now full of frozen salt. Can we have grit bins? They're really handy to make it easy to walk around when it's icy.
Okay, Councillor Manning.
I don't know if it's still the case, but certainly 2 years ago, you could, if you're a community group, which was a very loose definition, you could request a grit bin from the county council. So I'm happy to check if that's still the case.
Sadly, I'm not a community group. I'm just a person who lives in.
No, as I said, it's a very loose definition. If you essentially said you were a community group for that road, they're not looking to put any bureaucracy in the way. It's just.
I actually do know that they cost £100. I managed to secure two actually for an area in West Chesterton. What's the Yeah, it was actually at Pentlands Close or Pentlands, and but what happened was that the people who were the residents actually paid the £100 for the grit bins, and then what happens is if there is a grit bin there, then the council will come and fill it up with grit. So that I think you need to get in touch with a councillor and ask them how to advance it. That would be the.
So would that be my county council, Councillor Mistrini, or?
It is the county council.
I'm very happy to take that up.
I'll drop you an email.
Absolutely, please do. I've kept silent because I don't know, but I will find out.
Yeah, just to clarify the point about a couple of years ago, the City Council certainly made available grit to individual householders to be able to use. And I, in fact, have a small supply which I use for Martin Style Lane. So it would be worth contacting City Council perhaps to see if they're still prepared to do that.
Okay, do you want to ask your second question?
Yeah, the other one's just taking a chance of having all the North Area councils together at the same time. I've noticed a lot of you individually online have bellyached about how there's a certain lack of perceived accountability perhaps with City Deal, and I found as a resident talking to City Deal, I get a lot of pushback from them when I ask them any questions on anything ever. When I complain, they refer to each other a lot in complaints and then decide amongst themselves they've done nothing wrong. is there perhaps a democratic deficit, and do you guys feel that you should be collectively pushing back against this at all?
Councillor Price?
No, I don't think there is a democratic deficit in that. I mean, my understanding is that if people are extremely arrogant and rude and abusive towards officers when they're on the telephone, then they're not likely to get much assistance from them or much help of them. I think the officers that are involved with the City Deal / Greater Cambridge Partnership do a very, very good job. They work very closely with residents' associations, as we've seen, and the local liaison forums, certainly across the north of the city. So no, I don't think collectively we do.
I'd like to respond to that too. I mean, there are others here who do know how both the Histon Road and the Milton Road local liaison forums are working, so the residents, I mean. But all I can say is that from my point of view as chairing the Milton Road local liaison forum, that the officers who are involved now in the process relating to Milton Road, in my experience, are being responsive. And we have had meetings between them and Residents Association representatives. One of them went on for more than 5 hours in relation to what was happening in Milton Road, and we've had workshops and we've had smaller design concept groups, and although there can be differences of opinion in terms of what comes out, the conversations that are being held and the discussions that are being held, I believe, are, first of all, they're polite, but secondly, they are, I think, fruitful. But as I say, there are others in the audience who are participating in this and may have another view.
Councillor Todd Jones?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say something from my perspective as Chair of the Histon Road Local Liaison Forum. And I take to some extent the points you made, because I think it was, and to be fair to County Council officers who are basically being asked to double up as County Council officers in order to provide resource for what was then the City Deal, it wasn't a very satisfactory situation. That's vastly improved. We now have a dedicated team of officers, the Greater Cambridge Partnership, and I think we worked very successfully with them. So I think the situation did leave a little bit to desire, but it is, I think, much improved now. And again, from my perspective as Chair of the Histon Road Local Liaison Forum, I think there's been tremendous engagement with all the resident associations and new ones that have sprung up in the area around Histon Road, certainly. They've had every opportunity to get involved. We've had numerous meetings of the local liaison forum itself and workshops leading to the process in which resolutions were put forward to the Greater Cambridge Partnership Executive Board, and everyone is fully informed in the process. The website is also vastly improved, and I think that was really problematic in the earlier stages of certainly the City Deal. So I do accept there have been some issues, but I think it's a much better situation than it was, and there has been a lot of engagement and a lot of progress as well.
Councillor Manning?
It probably won't surprise anyone in this room to know that I do agree there's a democratic deficit. I think, first of all, let's just be clear here, what we're talking about is the structures, not the individual officers. I don't think this question was really about that. So yeah, there is a democratic deficit. Yes, I agree with Councillor Todd Jones that it has got better, but we have to remember that you think about this from the view of a resident who isn't in the sort of informed bubble that us as councillors are in, working out quite how to traverse the City Deal, the local liaison forums hanging off that, the County Council, the City Council, is incredibly confusing and incredibly difficult, and is disenfranchising. The LLFs have no power to make decisions. They simply make advisory notes. I would like to see that change, so there was a direct link between the LLF and the centralised projects. Not everyone agrees with me on that, but it's my own personal view. And I think that just overall, whilst there were necessary reasons for it happening at the time, I think a structure that sees only 3 people
making all the decisions essentially, that's the 3 executive members, cannot be a structure that empowers individual residents on such a large area.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next one is Mr. Taylor. I've marked the first one of your questions as that will come under the policing part, but your other questions, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you. So there's one question which doesn't come into a particular agenda item, and that's on a series of private and secret meetings have been discussing the proposals for remodelling Milton Road, and I don't think that's appropriate. I'd like to see proposals for highways changes in North Cambridge being discussed in public. And these are the task and finish groups, they're called, that have been held in October and November. I'm particularly concerned that I've got the invitations list under FOI from the Greater Cambridge Partnership. My local councillors in King's Hedges weren't invited, but councillors from the other end of the road towards the city were invited and did attend. Councillor Manning has said that he's received an apology from the PM for his lack of
Just to clarify, that's the project manager, not Theresa May.
The only apology Theresa May will ever give.
So I'd just like to tell you what I'd like to see, and that's like these decisions that this private meeting received a presentation on the safety concerns about the new proposals for the Elizabeth Way Milton Road roundabout. So they're considering really important stuff, the bus lanes, the trees. I'd like to see that in public for this and other highways projects in the area, please.
I'd just like to respond briefly by saying that at the last local liaison forum that we held, those people who were attending were asked to indicate if they wished to participate in the design concept groups and the workshops. And so it's not up to me to speak for the Greater Cambridge Partnership, but I had understood that people had put their names forward at that meeting, and that the residents' associations had informed their members and so on that this was a possibility. We followed the same procedure as we followed for the workshops prior. That was that people could contact me on the earlier occasions to say that they wished to attend, and some people did contact me, about half a dozen, and they all were able to attend. So I'm unsure really as to why there is a problem. If people don't indicate they wish to attend, then they won't be getting an invitation. You know, you can't just invite the world as it were.
Councillor Manning.
Won't surprise anyone to say I don't think that's good enough. You shouldn't have to turn up to one evening meeting out of many evening meetings in order to have the chance of potentially being invited to another evening meeting. You don't even know what those meetings could be about. I wasn't invited to some of the meetings that Richard Taylor was talking about, and I'm the local councillor for the area. And I think just one random example, I believe there was a bus workshop meeting that didn't actually feature any bus users. They didn't even advertise the fact that there was a workshop about it. Maybe on the buses. There's a crazy idea to get some bus users along. So it isn't good enough. These things should be advertised publicly and should be available as public meetings. There's no reason not to do that.
Just for clarification on that, the point that was made to me when I inquired about it was the fact that they were limiting numbers to that particular meeting. Because what they wanted was individuals from different areas rather than having a large number. And they said the meetings wouldn't work with, I think it was more than 20 people. I have to say, having attended one of them, I really can't understand why they couldn't have had more, because the format would have actually worked just as well with more numbers. So it would be, if there's going to be future ones, I agree, they should be more open.
Okay, thank you. What about the rest of your questions, Mr. Taylor?
They relate to specific agenda items.
Right, okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next one I've got is Owen Dunn.
Hello. I'd like to ask about some of the cycling provision along Green End Road. In particular, there's a narrow section between Franks Lane and the junction with Nuffield Road that it's particularly narrow and has only advisory lanes, and it means this is basically not infrastructure that is going to get people cycling. Can we have some sort of decent, segregated, preferably off-road cycling facility there, please? And the same theme continuing around the corner to the Nuffield Road. I think there's a proposal in the current round of city deal to have, again, an advisory on-road cycle lane along there, and when you have a school and lorries going down that road, I think we do need decent off-road segregated cycling provision.
Mr Dunn, we've got the cycling people coming later, so I think we'll give that question. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next one I've got is Lillian.
And my question is regarding an LHI bid we have had for the Border pedestrian crossing. Everyone knows that it's very dangerous for Chisholm Road. It has increased traffic rather than decreased lately. And there are a lot of older people, and there are those with disabilities and social housing around the area, cannot cross the road to go to the bus or to their homes from the bus. The agreement, the proposal that was approved was an uncontrolled crossing over Chisholm Road near the Border pedestrian and cycle access, adjacent to a bus stops. A dropped curb, tactile surface area with footlink and existing footway along the western side, and opposite the existing drop curb and the eastern side. It would facilitate access across Chisholm Road for pedestrians, cyclists, buggies, wheelchair, and mobility scooters. This sounds all very good. There was also on the other side some barriers that were to be improved so that the cyclists and buggies and things could actually get through to get into the actual area. Now, it also said at the end, the signage indicating older people crossing could be installed at each approach on Chisholm Road to the crossing point. And that was all approved. So we have asked them about when will you start, and today I have received following message. I'm currently awaiting a date from our contractor for the works. It's likely to be January, but once I know for sure it will update. Unfortunately, due to budgets, we're only able to put in the crossing itself and nothing further. So there won't be any signs or additional lining with a scheme. Apologies for this. That's a death trap. I'm sorry. Nobody would dare to cross that crossing because there will be no signs telling there is a crossing. There will be no light, which was the great hope we had. And I don't know how to handle this, but I think it's very bad for us as residents. Please help.
Councillor Jones?
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Yes, obviously the original LHI was for the physical infrastructure. And when we met and talked to the project officer, then we looked to try and introduce signage, both marking on the road and on street furniture approaching the crossing in each direction. And I'll happily follow this up. I'm actually meeting the project officer over other projects as well on Monday afternoon. So we'll have a discussion about the Boldale crossing. I find it hard to believe they can't find some funding, a little bit additional funding, at least for marking the roads on the approach to the crossing. So I will continue to pursue this, the additional element, the signage element in particular. Okay, and I'll involve you in that visit if you wish to, Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Okay.
Lovely, thank you very much. Trainee Payne?
Hello, I've got a query about the housing development on Hawkins Road in King's Hedges. And I believe the housing development there was due to be finished just over a year ago, and there was a big hullabaloo in the Cambridge News back in the summer about how the Keep Mode, the building contractors, had been sacked or sent away because they weren't progressing quickly enough. And I'm just wondering if you could update us on when those houses will be filled, because it's now well over a year since the due deadline.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. You're absolutely right. That small housing development should have been occupied and has been, to all intents and purposes, from the outside. Those homes have been finished. Unfortunately, we had, as a council, via Keepmoat hadn't done their job properly. We couldn't get the UK power network, who are notoriously difficult to deal with, out to connect the power to the buildings. I understand that has now been done. If you've been round there lately, you will have seen that the roadway in the footpath there has now been, I think it was certainly near completion when I was last there. The last update I've had from officers is we will be hoping to have those homes let early in the new year.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bragman.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm the County Councillor for Milton and Waterbeach Division, and so my concern is about residents on the north-east side of Fen Road, Chesterton Crossing. Now, you'll be aware that since Cambridge North Station opened, the crossing barrier has been down for much longer than it was before, for longer times and more of them. And what I'm concerned about is that we have, in Milton Detached Parish, we have some 325 caravans, so I estimate, let's say, 500 or more residents, plus 20 residential houses, and at least, certainly over 50 employees working on the east side of that crossing, who want to get in, others want to get out. We've had some gentle analysis work done by some people who have looked at the timetable and looked at the number of times that the barrier is down, and it's considerably more. Well, we're concerned that the frequency and the period of time for which the barrier is down, which you know in this area has caused problems. People have become frustrated and tried to get across. In just one particular period, between 8 and 8:20 in the morning, the barrier is technically down, guess what, 9 times. In other words, let's face it, the barrier is down for 20 minutes. Now, you know, whilst that might be irritating if you're trying to get to work or take your children to school, or indeed to come into Fen Road to get to work, that could be quite dangerous if there's a fire or somebody needs an ambulance. So what I wanted to ask this committee is whether we, I'm County Councillor, but whether we, with the City Council, can work together to put pressure on Network Rail to review the timetable. Because for some periods of that time, anecdotally, I've heard that sometimes if you ring the signal master, he'll put the barrier up for a bit if he recognises that it's safe. And I'm sure it's all sorts of stuff to do with that they're being cautious, it's a risk issue, so they're being extra careful and keeping the barrier down for the maximum amount of time. It's an automatic crossing, so they're also having to be careful because it's not being, there's nobody there to be reactive. But I just would like to ask if we could work together to put pressure on Network Rail to have a look at the timetable and reconsider it, because let's face it, not before very long we'll have 8-car trains going through there, and that will be, they'll have to be down for longer because the trains are longer. So any thoughts on that, folks?
And just to let you know that I have asked you to be put on the agenda for the 1st of March, our next North Area meeting.
Oh, right, okay.
And we're trying to find out, going to try and find out who's in charge and everything, and so we'll keep you updated. I'll email you.
Just as a thought, I have also raised that issue at the Fen Line Users Association AGM. We had an excellent speaker who was the manager for all of East Anglia for Network Rail, and I raised that question with her. Now I'm trying to ask the question again and pursue that with her because she's aware of timetabling for the whole region, so I'm hoping we can get some pressure there. So I'll come back and see you next time round.
Okay, I'll keep you informed, all right. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Manning?
It's probably all just worth saying for everyone's information that I'm in the process of trying to set up a station user group, which Councillor Bradham knows about, to Old Brookgate, which may be another route into Network Rail. For anyone who doesn't know, dealing with Network Rail is a time-consuming process where it's very difficult to find any individuals who are empowered to make executive-level decisions. I think we've all experienced that over the year, and that's obviously, and that will, just for Richard's benefit, that will be an open public meeting that anyone can come to.
Councillor Saris?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to reiterate, I think the seriousness of this, it's not just the problem with the train, but the issue that the trains are going to be getting longer, and in a sense the longer trains otherwise to be welcomed, but also that there are proposals to have more trains running into the station, which means unless there's some joined up thinking, the barriers will effectively be perpetually down. So this, I think this really is a serious matter. We need some proper answers from Network Rail.
I agree with you, Councillor Saris. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 6, which is really just for your information. It's in your information pack. So I'll now go on.
Are you moving my question to another agenda item?
Yeah, on to agenda item, yours the cycle one, isn't it?
It's about the improvement program.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll put the number on there, all right, so I haven't forgot about you. Hello.
Sorry, it's Ian Literary. I thought I'd also got a number of questions about the level crossing as well. I'm not sure whether that will be taken at this point or...
no, we haven't got it yet.
I spoke to you about it last night. Maybe it didn't get down as a question.
What we spoke about this morning,
yes.
About the level crossing,
yes.
That's what I said to you, that we would be having them come on the 1st of March.
Yes, no, as I mentioned to you, there are a number of other issues which need dealing with before March.
Okay. Well, do you want to say now? We've got 5 minutes, all right?
Sure, thank you very much. Yes, the second of everything Councillor Bradham has said. There are several other issues, though, which arise from the crossing and improving the crossing, one of which is there's been a suggestion for some time that there should be a route to bypass the crossing from Fen Road down to the towpath and indeed down to the new cycle bridge, which would at least enable pedestrians and cyclists to bypass the crossing when the crossing is down. Has the Highways Authority done anything about that? Has anything happened about that? What can happen about that? There have been other suggestions like that it could go through through the field, which is a lot further down, which is absolutely unsuitable. And I know that Network Rail have said that they don't like that idea because they are afraid that it will bring people from the Chisholm Trail across the crossing where they wouldn't have done before. But I think they are making the mistake, probably, that actually there are more people using the Chisholm Trail than there are using Fen Road. And actually, it would also be quite a lot safer it is safer for people to cross the road at the top of the crossing rather than further down where the people are scheduled to cross the road at the moment, because visibility is much better from the top of the crossing. So the first question is what the Highways Authority has done about that. The second thing, and this is quite urgent, is that there is already a plan to improve the crossing. Network Rail are fairly far advanced with that, and indeed it's supposed to be completed by April next year. But one of the elements in that proposal is to move the barrier on the fen side of the crossing, on the far side of the crossing from here, further down away from the crossing. And that will do two things. One is it will increase the delays on the crossing because it will take people longer to get over, and they will have to have the crossing down longer to allow for that interval. And B, it will actually stop the possibility of having a bypass path, or make it much more difficult to have a bypass path because there won't be room for it anymore with the crossing there. So again, this needs to have representations from the council now, and unfortunately that can't really wait until March to deal with that. thirdly, in conjunction with, in the context of the proposals for the crossing, there is really a need to have a continuous pathway, either one side at least or the other of the crossing. And the improvements to the crossing, which Network Rail have suggested, don't imply a continuous pathway. And what is clearly needed, and probably the easiest thing to do, is to, for the, again, the Highways Authority to have a little bit of the land that is on the southeast side of the crossing, which is by a car park, to extend the crossing, extend the pathway past there so that it would be continuous crossing. So again, has the Council Highway Authority done anything about doing that and trying to organise that? And your point is clearly important. And two other minor things. One is, could there be a gritting bin on the crossing? Because it's quite dangerous and it doesn't get gritted over the far side, generally speaking. And finally, could there be rubbish bins either side of the crossing? Because at least if people are sitting there waiting, they might be encouraged to get out of their cars and put their rubbish in a rubbish bin rather than slinging it out further along the road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that. Councillor Manning?
Just on the point about the alternative route for pedestrians and cyclists, I think you know some of this, but I believe, Chair, we've got the cycling project team coming later. Is that correct? Chair, yeah, this is, yeah. So I won't put too many words in their mouth, but one of the things that both Anna and I have looked into, the officers, is using the Chisholm Trail project, which includes the new bridge, to possibly get an alternative route round Fen Road for pedestrians and cyclists. What we've had back from the team is that they are very, very hard pressed to deliver the trail project at all, and things like that, which are unfortunately out of scope of the project, despite seeming sensible, they are worried will jeopardise the overall project. So separately, Councillor Bradham and I are going to meet with the landowner and just see what willingness that landowner has, whether it is a question of they're asking too much money and whether they're going to get there or not, in the hope that we can potentially still deliver it as part of the Chisholm Trail project. We can't promise anything, obviously, because...
He's quite happy.
Yeah, I mean, he may say that. I mean, we'll see what happens when we meet with him. All I can say is we're trying, but ultimately, you know, it may come down to a question of potentially jeopardising the trip in the project team's view, jeopardising the Chisholm Trail project against getting that route. We would be happy to take that to the Highways and Community Infrastructure Committee, because ultimately we wanted to overrule. That would be the way of doing it, and I obviously have overruled before by that committee. But I hope we won't get to that. I hope we can find a sort of negotiation. And just one of your other points, if you're not aware, there is a process via this committee where we can allocate rubbish bins. Very exciting local government sometimes, isn't it? But I'm sure we will look at that in our next round. I'm sure we're all happy to put a bin there if we can.
Yeah, I'll look into that. If you can liaise with Ian. Yeah? Okay, lovely. Okay, that's the end of the open forum. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go on to item now, number 7, which is the police and safer neighbourhood. We're also going to do 7 and 10 together, which is the antisocial behaviour side.
What happens to 6?
It's just for your information, Kay.
Okay.
Not just yours.
No, it's just for Kay.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just query, because the actual the Milton Road Library. Sorry, it's a reference.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I knew I wasn't wrong, Councillor Manning.
Read the papers. Preferably for you.
Dangerous lady. Oh, see that? Those people are scared of you. Knowing words from the good councillors there. Good evening. I'm Sergeant Kevin Mishik. I'm responsible for the North Area Partnership team, and I'm now going to, as I always do, read the report I wrote some weeks ago and answer questions afterwards. Well, actually, has everyone read it? Yeah, okay. Has anyone got any questions? Because there's many questions there, isn't there? You can have your... yeah, because if you've read the report, you know what it says, and I will answer the questions one at a time, because otherwise I won't remember them.
All right, okay, I'll do it now then. I've got...
All I'll say, Jay, is there any questions about what the report says before we move on to questions about what not the report doesn't say? It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Just.
These
no.
are issues
good,
that...
right, fine. Okay. I just didn't want to...
Now, this is quite serious. The people whose questions these are do not want to be filmed, and I would ask you, Mr. Taylor, to please not film them. Okay?
Yes, did you? Just film me.
Okay.
I'm much more interested.
Okay, I've got the first question. Do you want me to read it out, people?
Okay. Chair, do you want to give me that? I'll read it and then I'll answer it. Therefore,
all right. And then you've got to read that one there as well. And that one there.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Right. So basically, the questions are both about Fen Road. As to what happened on Friday night, I don't know. Is the honest answer. I can find out. Jess, what happened on Friday night on Fen Road? Can you have a look? Right, answer that question. I don't know. I wouldn't work on Friday night. Fen Road is an ongoing issue. It's an ongoing issue that has been for a number of times. I know here someone's used the word lawless. I personally don't agree with that. Fen Road is a unique and challenging place to police, and there is a large amount of work which goes on regularly by not only ourselves but other agencies to address the issues that take place there.
Perhaps on the Fen Road one, the person who hasn't been able to get the response from Sergeant Missick because he wasn't there, could let Councillor Bird know their email address.
Jess is going to find out now. She's got the magic of the force computer.
Could you read the question out?
Yeah.
Could you read the question and then answer?
Yeah, fine.
Thank you.
Could the police say what happened on Friday night on Fen Road? My colleague is looking. Anderson, another resident that the house windows were broken by a ball-bearing gun and the perpetrators drove past the police cars, taunting the film and the police. Say my colleague is looking that one up. I'm not aware of that one. But when I find out, I will give you an answer. And the next one is how much crime do the residents of Fen Road have to endure before effective action is taken? Why is the activity on Fen Road classed as antisocial behaviour? I would include shooting through a living room window, driving on pavement at speed as a life-threatening criminal activity. The law outlines what is antisocial behaviour and what is criminality. That there described as an act of criminal damage, I would consider to be antisocial behaviour in another organisation.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Didn't understand that. Didn't catch that.
Sorry, right, so basically the way we work is things are either a crime or they're not a crime, and each crime has a definition of what that crime is, so if something matches the definition of a crime, we record it as such. So somebody breaking a window would be an act of criminal damage and it will be recorded and investigated along those lines.
Is that a crime?
Yes.
Yes.
So that will be recorded and investigated as a crime. I'm unsure who said it's antisocial behaviour because we wouldn't have done. Somebody's clearly said it's antisocial behaviour. It is antisocial, but it's a criminal.
The question was, is it a crime?
Yes.
Is it antisocial
No.
behaviour? And that's what you've answered.
Okay, fine. Okay, and the third one here is Fen Road is lawless.
That's not a question.
Not a question, just, you said read them out, that's what it says. I don't think it is. Lawless would insinuate that we didn't do anything down there, and we do, as I was explaining a moment ago. We work with other agencies and work with doing some work in the beginning of the new year with the British Transport Police around the the crossing, policing the crossing adequately. My staff are down there on a daily basis and challenging and dealing with behaviour that goes on down there. The most recent spate, and it's the one that's mentioned there, has been the damage to the windows by the ball bearings. One of my teams actively investigating that, and there are a number of lines of investigation which are being moved forward as we speak. Unfortunately, I can't really go into those here and now, but there are lines of investigation which are being taken forward. Any more questions about Fen Road?
The CCTV camera. There's a CCTV camera erected on Water Street, which disappeared within a day. I think CCTV would be a good way of reassuring local residents that activity is being picked up when it happens, and perhaps making us feel safer. So, is there any plans in place to replace CCTV or increase the number of CCTV cameras around?
As I said, we work with our partners around that, and our partner who's in charge of CCTV has a hand up. So.
Thank you, Chair. Linda Kilkelly, I'm the Safer Communities Manager for the City Council. And we did put up the camera and it disappeared because it was vandalised when the engineer went out to replace it. The lamppost was too low and the expectation was that the next one would be vandalised as well. We are looking at putting in another camera in a different position that won't be so easily vandalised.
Yes, I'd just like to make 2 points. One is quite a lot of the issues, I think, come from moving vehicles. I know one person who's had, in cycling, who's had about 5 incidents, 3 of vehicles swerving towards him in an intimidating manner, and 2 have actually had things thrown at him, one an egg and one a balloon or something. Clearly CCTV would help with that, because at least it would help to identify the vehicle if an incident was timed closely, and one could then look at the CCTV recording of it. I would also just like to add, again, coming back to the crossing, that the bad driving is at least in part exacerbated by people feeling they've got to rush, they've got to get through the crossing, otherwise they're going to have to wait there for 20 minutes. And that certainly doesn't help with stopping speeding in Fen Road, and it certainly doesn't help with stopping the bunging up of Fen Road, generally speaking, and the difficulty getting down Fen Road, on the city side of the crossing, when it's all clogged up with vehicles waiting for the crossing.
Just a quick question, sort of suggestion. While cycling on Fen Road a little while ago, a guy drove straight at me. I tried to present the camera footage that I had my camera that time. I don't know, some days I do, to Cambridge Constabulary, and you guys weren't interested. I wonder, as this is a problem area, actually I'd like you to action camera footage of crime wherever it happens, but as this is a problem area, perhaps you could reconsider a measure for taking it seriously on Fen Road and the surrounding area.
The force policy is we don't action dash cam footage unless it's an aggravating factor involved in it.
Aggravating? Being driven at? It's fairly aggravating.
If you let me answer the question, I'll answer the question.
Kevin, I think we'd be prepared to look at that policy.
That's what.
It's a policy, but we're prepared to look at it. It's just a policy, it's not a law.
Yeah, no, as the boss rightly says, the point is an aggravating factor. If there's an aggravating factor and it's working towards what the committee are asking us to do, I don't see there's an issue around us reviewing that footage and potentially taking action on it.
Can I ask that you would consider...
Sorry, we've got people waiting.
Sorry. Thank you. I'd like to come away from Chesterton onto King's Hedges. I'd like to know...
Can we get this one sorted, then we'll get to your side as well, yeah? Sorry, Kay. Yeah, it's the gentleman there, and then it's Mr. Taylor.
Representing Chesterton Methodist Church.
just want to get on record here that the problem is wider than just Fen Road.
Yeah.
We have had a number of issues over the last few years. The current one is of driving on the grass around the church, causing damage to the grass. Minor issues in a social context, but nevertheless, it shows that the problem is wider than that. We very much appreciate the help of the city rangers in putting up temporary fencing and the offer of help for putting up more permanent fencing in due course. But that sort of damage is wider than just Fen Road.
Mr. Taylor? And then I think we need to...
Thank you. I think getting a Fen Road policing priority set this evening is one of the most important things you should do this evening, due to the risk of injuries and deaths and the fear of injuries and deaths from people who are using the area. I think the comments on it being treated as antisocial come from your priorities last time, both of which do reference antisocial behaviour, and I suggest that this time you step it up and talk about serious criminality and trying to reduce the risks of injuries and harm. In terms of the wider area, I'm also concerned about identifying and grouping the crimes which are occurring. For example, when the Cambridge News reported on a series of incidents of people having things thrown at them from vehicles, the police report commented that they were only aware of a fraction of the offences which had taken place on Fen Road. They didn't seem capable of connecting issues on Fen Road, Water Street, Water Lane and Green End Road, Scotland Road as being part of the same issue, which is something I'd like you to, again, to put in the priority. Personally, I found myself now not completely avoiding the area, but my threshold for going into that area has now increased, and I do often have reason where I'd like to go into that area. So I think it's something which really does impact people and that you should act on. We've got a priority set on traffic, on road safety. But what we're not getting in the report still is statistics on the traffic offences. I think seeing the statistics on the traffic offences and what's being treated as dangerous driving, for example, is something which you should ask for as a report back. And I'm surprised it hasn't come based on the priority you set last time.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to get back very quickly then.
Just to reassure residents, I think that Cambridge News report was rather down to the particular reporter in question. I can confirm that I had a PCSO visit with some residents, and every crime that they mentioned, the PCSO was able to look up on the force computer system and find it recorded. So, you know, please don't believe every story that's written by Raymond Brown in the Cambridge News.
Okay, thank you. We all know that there's...
Can we have the answers to the original question?
Did you answer the question?
What happened on Friday night?
What happened Friday night?
I'll give you the mic.
That's right, no, you said.
Oh, thank you, John.
Yes, so I've looked up the incident which I imagine is the one in question. It's to do with Water Street and Fen Road. A call came in about 8:20 to do with vehicles, a driver seen possibly with ball bearings coming out of something within the vehicle. They have camera footage which we've reviewed, the notes of that on there, but I suggest that perhaps we could look at other people's. The vehicle's been seen driving around Water Street, possibly a van. There's some information about it which we've then looked into. What I can confirm is that the call came in at 8:20. By 10:09 we had 4 plainclothes officers on Fen Road looking for the vehicle. The colour of it was then confirmed, which has been passed on to our team. I've heard conversations about that this week, and we are pulling together some names and possible vehicles for that. So we are getting there in terms of working out what's going on.
Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. And I'll just add before we get on to all the important stuff, Fen Road is, it's not just Fen Road, it's Green End Road, High Street, Scotland Road, the whole lot. And I've also heard through the grapevine there's 3 drug gangs going around.
I'm going to refer to what Councillor Manning says. I know the person that sent the email, and when I find them, we're going to have a conversation about it. That's all I probably should say, because if I say any more, it might become unprofessional.
Okay, all right. So now I'm going to go back to the agenda item. Oh, sorry, Councillor Sarah.
Thank you. In a sense, it's following on from something that Ian Manning said. Clearly, there was a sense from some members of the public that troubles in and around Fen Road have only been regarded as issues of antisocial behaviour. That has never been the case on the part of this committee, and it has never been the case on the part of the police. I'm afraid that sense has been spread again, rather as with the other incident, by essentially misreporting of both what this committee has done and how the police have been addressing the issues. The specific issues of criminality that we've already heard reference to tonight, as we know, the police have been investigating and have been encouraged to investigate by this committee. The policing priorities involving Fen Road and the paperwork before you do refer to antisocial behaviour, but even with respect to Fen Road, don't only refer to antisocial behaviour, but also refer to the road safety issues around Fen Road. And the prioritising of issues isn't an invitation to the police and isn't read by the police as an invitation to ignore everything else. And to give the impression to the public that it does is completely misleading.
Oh, please. Last one.
I think it's probably worth saying what perhaps Sergeant Music didn't feel like to say, that there was an email that I've been circulated to me from multiple sources that was extremely irresponsible, because it was essentially, it read a lot like a sort of rather racist meme, frankly, and made reference to warring drugs gangs and people being stopped with guns. I live in that area. You know, that it was not happening, and it scared a lot of people, particularly people who have been through some real criminal damage, and it really didn't help the situation. So please, if you do get an email that talks about warring drugs gang, this is not correct.
Lovely, thank you. Right, I know Councillor Price had something on the report he wanted to speak about.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just, in reference to the road safety with specific references to Albury Road, Gilbert Road, Fen Road, it says, and King's Hedges Road, about antisocial driving. I'm going to the current situation where it says here there's been a marked reduction in the number of reports of antisocial driving reported to the constabulary. Now, I've talked to residents of King's Hedges who, for whatever reason, have stopped reporting those as issues because they have felt that nothing much was being done about it, that there was a great difficulty in catching the perpetrators. That's not necessarily a criticism of the police, because they're on motorbikes and they get around really quite quickly and can move from King's Hedges into Westchester, can move wherever they like very, very quickly. But it is still happening. I know it's still going on.
Yeah, last night.
Apparently last night. But so just to say that because you've got a reduction in the numbers of cases being reported to you, doesn't necessarily correlate with it actually diminishing.
The real difficulty for that is I work on the information that sits in front of me. I work on the information, it's not simply the report, but it's the information that my team are bringing to me on a Monday. We have a Monday meeting and we discuss the priorities that are set at this meeting and the sister meetings around the city, so it's discussing that. I can only work on what I'm being told, and I don't believe it's stopped, and I would be naive to think that's the case. What I'm going to say is I'm not going to make reference to 101 because I used to work for the man that did. What I'm going to say is the Force website has had a significant revamp in the last 3 months. Yeah, it is significantly improved. If you haven't been on it in the last 3 months, I would recommend that you do. On the Force website now is the ability to report issues directly via the website without using 101. There is also the ability to web chat with our control room and our police service centre operators, and able to report issues in that way without having to pick up the phone. So yes, I don't think it has stopped. I know there has been we have had some significant wins in terms of vehicles being seized and stuff like that. But please, if people don't tell me, I can't do anything about it.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Scott, Councillor Sargent and Councillor Austin. Sorry, Kay.
I basically wanted to say what Councillor Price has also said, but we would, in residents of King's Hedges, we would like to know what the police are actually doing about this. Mostly, basically, I can tell you they go down King's Hedges, they're going through Campkin Road, they're going into Hawkins Road, they're going through the cycle path into Milton, through Downham's Lane and into Chesterton. And that quite often is their route. If that is, of course, if they're not using a turning point in a certain car park outside my bedroom window. So I really would, for the residents and the local residents where I live, we would like to know exactly what the police are going to do about it and what they are doing at the moment. Thank you.
I did originally say at the beginning, as everyone read the report, but it says here, we've received support from our road policing unit and from the special constabulary as well as wider policing team within the city. There have been a number of successes, a number of vehicles have been issued with warnings under Section 59 of the Police Reform Act, which is basically issued to a vehicle which is being driven in an antisocial manner. If it gets issued a second time to either the driver or the vehicle becomes seized and they have to pay around £150 to get their vehicle back or it turns into a cube. And again, a number of vehicles have been seized because people haven't had appropriate documents. Generally, people driving motorbikes are not supposed to, so a number of those have been seized for not being insured. It says here, makes reference to 2 mopeds being seized by one person who has essentially dug an even bigger pit for themselves by lying to the officers who've been dealing with them, and he's now probably likely to not be able to drive legally for a good 2 or 3 years, as well as probably some other related criminal activity that's come out of that. And also, as well as that, the team are out there on a regular basis in high visibility patrolling to prevent it to tear. The difficulty is those roads are 24 hours a day, and there's only, to be brutally honest, there's only 120 hours worth of officers at the time I have a week to address any issues that come in the north of the city, and I'd love, they're out there as often as they can get out there.
Chair, I mean, obviously I've contacted Sergeant Missick on this, and he tried to get additional resources from the traffic police, and that's been turned down. Perhaps the inspector would like to comment on why this can't be seen as a priority and provide additional resource to the police, because Sergeant Missick's just said that he hasn't got enough resource to resolve this issue, and it's quite evident that it does need additional resource.
I could save the inspector the answer. I put the bid towards, we have what's called an organisational resource meeting which happens once a week, and you can bid to the Joint Protective Services, which is a posh name for our road policing unit, and if it is significantly high up their agenda, they will come and help you. Unfortunately, the agenda covers the entire county, and my bid wasn't successful. I'm happy to, if it gets, I'm happy to bid to them again, and it comes back to Councillor Price. As I said, if you tell me more evidence I can bring to bear and say I've had 55 calls about this in the last week, look how important it is. If I say I've had 1 call in the last week, they would laugh me off the desk. So it comes down to tell me about it, and it gives me the ability to bring the resources of the force to bear.
Oh, okay, sorry.
As I said, there's 101.
Sorry, can I?
Sorry, we've already got people in the queue waiting to speak.
I'm very clear that the police are under huge pressure with cuts, and this is not a criticism, it's a comment that issue about mopeds and racing around, which covered virtually the whole of the north, was King's Hedges, was West Chesterton, was Orchard Park, was Arbury. It was almost the sole subject of what huge numbers of people talked about in the summer. From our own house, we heard it, continually. We had a lot of people calling. I know councillors called, and yet somehow, we're getting to a colder bit now. It's icy on the road. Antisocial behaviour of that sort of nature tends to drop off of this, simply because I've come off in the middle of the night on an icy road. But the fact is that whilst I'm sure you've done some very good work within the resources you have, that was the major issue plaguing North Cambridge for months over the summer, and it must be disheartening for the police, but it's even more disheartening for residents that that major issue has no visibility and almost no action, and that people feel it's not worth reporting. You'll know that it was in the Cambridge News, you'll know that it was in other press, and there's got to be something deeply wrong when the most reported and resident bothering incidents in the north appear to have absolutely no action from the police. And again, I stress, that is not a criticism of you, because I think you're doing it, but there's something going badly wrong when we don't get any action.
My boss is looking at me like if I don't give him the mic, he's going to sack me, so I'd better pass it over.
With the Chair's permission?
Yes.
What I'm going to suggest is that we look at this problem in a very different way. I come to this role with some examples and some learning from other areas that I've worked in. This issue causes us significant problems with police tactics because of the persistent nature of it and because of the way that we have to catch these people, which is very, very dangerous. And I'm not saying we won't take some risks to catch these people, because we will. However, the sorts of resources that we need to use to catch these people are the same resources that you want us, I'm assuming, to be out catching drink drivers this time of year. And also at the moment, and the problem with burglary in your communities right now, those people I have to make an ethical decision, I want those people as part of our plan to be ready to catch people that are caught in the act of burglary. Now, I understand everything you're saying to me, and I've heard it from other communities as well, because this is a problem, it's a quality of life issue, it's a problem that it is not just happening in this community. What I have used successfully elsewhere, and I'm not making a promise, I'm taking away a commitment to look at it, is the use of a public spaces protection order, which I have used successfully elsewhere. Now what that does is it changes the dynamic of the situation from a situation where you as the public call us, and Jess has just looked up, was it 10 calls since the 1st of November, and I can understand that if you don't see something happen, then why would you call again? We can change that, perhaps with a PSPO, to a situation where we move from a resident picking up the phone, a police resource having to be available, having to be in the right place and having to respond and having to play cat and mouse, to a situation where we use a civil enforcement method, where we use a combination of a different standard of evidence, which is balance of probabilities rather than beyond a reasonable doubt, which is what we're required to for a criminal offence, to a position where we can use different types of evidence to prosecute people in different ways. So give them £100 fines as a breach of a PSPO, rather than a criminal sanction, which is much, much more expensive and more difficult and more timely, more time intensive for us to prove. So I'm not making a promise for that, but I am making a promise, a commitment to go and look at that with my colleagues in the City Council, because we ultimately would have to do that together. But I think that problem needs a completely different approach to it, because it's obviously one that's not going to go away with the resource that we currently have.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, we really need to get on. Councillor Price hadn't finished, and then I've got Councillor Scott, Councillor Manning, Councillor Austin, and Councillor Sargent?
No, I'm fine.
You're fine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going through the table on page 37.
The numbers.
And looking at the incidence of violent crime across the north of the city as a whole are on an upward trajectory, shall we say. Being more specific, as a ward councillor for King's Hedges, my concern here is that it's going up, well, by 13 every however many months that is. My maths are terrible, but I can I can note the difference between 129 and 142. So it's going up at 13 at the time, and about a fifth of them are with injuries. Now, I recognise that the with injury is a recent addition. This was something that we didn't have before, and of course now, not be pedantic, but split head. You know, the extent to these injuries, because that's quite a worrying thing. I think an increase in the levels of violent crime, A, across the whole of the north, but certainly B, from my perspective, in King's Hedges, as of course is the increase in the numbers of well, burglaries, dwelling and or other across the north, but again in King's Hedges, which again seem to be on the rise. Now, I don't know whether that's because a serial burglar has been let out of prison again recently, because I'm told that's quite often the case. When there's an increase in the levels of burglaries, it's because somebody that's very, well, they're not that good at it because they get caught eventually, but somebody that makes their living at it comes out of prison and is back doing what they do best. So I'd just be interested to know how we're going to tackle this rise in violent crime and this rise in burglary.
The burglary figures, I'll address those first. Burglary tends to have seasonal peaks and troughs because of things, so I would review it. The fact it's lower, I'd review that, I compare the like for like. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. There is a rise, but it's not doubled. Does that make sense? Because Reading there's been twice as many burglaries in the north of the city is a fairly alarming piece of information to take on. I would say the increase is probably the 110 to 127 is a more comparable. There is an increase. We have a burglary team which deals with our persistent burglary offenders and stuff like that. And my team deals with they go out and deal with the follow-up to the burglary. So burglary is always one of the top priorities. It's one of the force priorities at the moment, isn't it? Yeah. So it's one of the priorities of the force, and it always will be. Nobody likes a burglar. In fact, the other criminals don't even like burglars. So it's at the front, and it's at the front of the cities. In fact, it's at the front of the southern, what we call the southern areas, tactical priority in London's burglary. So rest assured, there are very few stones left unturned in terms of burglary. In terms of violent crime, one of the reasons it was a good idea to look at the injuries and without is violent crime itself carries a massive gambit in terms of what it goes from. It goes from me being rude to you to me breaking your jaw. So each one of those 155 doesn't mean there's been 155 fights, which is probably a good thing because that's a lot of fighting. Yes, there is an increase. Again, it's probably one of those ones where I couldn't put my finger on the reason as to why. It covers a wide range of issues, from domestic abuse through to drunken nights out, through to schoolyard fights, and
presumably this is a force-wide priority in the same way.
Violent crime, not so much, but safeguarding is. I tend to review the. It sounds awful. We work on on 3 words, which is threat, risk, and harm. And if you look at the injury statistics, they stay roughly similar. So we would spend more of our time and effort on it. Assaults and the like which have taken place and someone who's been significantly injured. Not that we wouldn't do the other stuff, but when you're making decisions, it's a question of actually what's actually happened. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, good. Because wasn't sure I was.
For the Community Safety Partnership, we also measure attendance at A&E, and if it's not broken down into ward areas for the city as a whole, but as a reassurance, the actual figures of attendance at A&E have been falling over the past year. So that would indicate that although they're with injuries, they're not absolutely serious injuries. I know they're still injuries, but they're not ones that would necessitate somebody attending hospital.
Okay, Councillor Scott.
I'd just like to address Sergeant Mizik, page 31, and the first item on this list about child sexual exploitation, and I wanted to say a couple of things. Number one, this is a citywide issue. We do understand that here. Number two, I'm glad that it's extending to wider safeguarding issues, because those issues can ultimately lead to child sexual exploitation, and it's better to pick them up earlier. And I do want to emphasise to you and to the inspector that this is a really vital issue on a Cambridge-wide basis, in light of the fact that the Cambridgeshire County Council is closing a number of children's centres all over Cambridgeshire, but within Cambridge City, that there are going to be cutbacks to staff, and that I understand it that the staff are remaining are going to be trained as social workers. Now, anybody who knows anything about social work knows that it is a profession, and you cannot train staff on a nighttime course or some short-term basis. And so I'm saying to you as police that you are going to have to pick up the slack in this area, because the County Council is seriously failing in its responsibility, in my opinion, towards children. They have set up a committee called a Committee for Looked After Children, and Councillor Richards, who sits here on our North Area Committee, is a member of that committee. And anybody who is concerned about this issue might be in touch with Councillor Richards, because she is taking the matter extremely seriously. But I conclude simply by repeating that I'm pleased that police are taking this seriously as a citywide issue, and that it's being extended to wider safeguarding issues. So thank you for pursuing it. It really is serious, and it will become more serious because of the cutbacks at the county.
Councillor Austin. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't want to dwell on this one too much, but I just want to ask the question. It's going back to the antisocial behaviour of the scooters and bikes driving very fast. I had reported that the police didn't seem to be particularly interested in it. Now, I actually reported myself one, which was at 11:15 one night, going down Elizabeth Way, and doing it for some time. And when I called, I was asked to go and find the number plates on the bikes, which was clearly impossible. I was actually in my gym jams and point away from the and I was told that as a result, it couldn't be reported as antisocial behaviour because I didn't have the number plate. Was that a mistake, or is that true? And if so, I can see why people aren't reporting it.
This man has entrance music. What happens when our call takers are all very highly trained and very skilled, and as well as a system in that is there will be a script that they read from. And one of the questions on that script will probably say, "Can you see the number plate?" And they ask for calls. I'm unsure as to what they should have. Everybody, my understanding is, and in case I'm hopefully not wrong, but everybody who phones the force and reports something to us, they create an incident for it, and my team's able to access that. So the simple fact that you phoned up and told us that will turn up, and on a search against the beat code where you live, we will be able to use that as part of the evidence to address the situation, address the issues that are going on. That's one way of recording it. There are other ways of recording it which they wouldn't be able to do without a registration number. But if you phone up and say, "I want to tell you something," the operator will just take that information, put it onto a computer and send it probably to me. So it would have been reported, it would have been recorded. I'm unsure as to what more reporting registration number would have got, but thankfully I don't work in control.
You could just check it, because they did specifically say it wouldn't be reported. So that's the feedback I got.
Yes, no, I find myself unfortunately at times defending people that don't work for me, and I have no idea what letter they shouldn't. I can. It looks like Jess is rapidly typing away now, so maybe we'll know the answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, there's nothing else then from the councillors. We need to really go on to page 38, which is the police recommendations. There are 6 recommendations, of which the committee is asked to nominate their top 3 for focus over coming months. Okay, I'll just say that number 1 I would like to be kept, and added criminal activity as well as antisocial behaviour. Thank you.
What I'll say, Chair, is don't hang up on the wording too much. If it says antisocial behaviour, as the councillor from East Chester said, what you're essentially saying is turning your gaze to Fen Road.
No, I want it East Chester.
East Chester, yeah, fine.
Because it's not just Fen Road. Councillor Todd Jones?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, shock horror, I'd like to actually add a priority to the list, which may not be in accord with the current arrangements, but I think it's very important, and it is actually following consultation with the police, including the RB PCSO Alex Smith, and that's following the serious incident in Aiken Street and Darwin Drive area. And I've since had some emails from residents in Erasmus Close where some actions have been taken in the area, including the deployment of permanent CCTV of a parade of shops in Aiken Street, has helped reassure residents who use that facility, but nevertheless inevitably does move some drug dealing and other criminal activity elsewhere in the area. So I've had a number of emails about specific incidents in Erasmus Close, which is a fairly secluded part of the area off Darwin Drive. So there are clearly ongoing issues there. Lots of sort of anecdotal reports from residents that criminal elements still operating in the area, and I'd really like to see, as the title of the recommendation sheet on page 38 stresses, it's not excluding any other priorities, but it is asking about focus. And I think the police should continue to add specifically to this list, and I would like it to be a priority for this committee, or a focus for this committee, to continue to recognise the need for the Aiken Street and Darwin Drive area to have specific police focus, profile, whatever work they deem is appropriate for that area. So if I can put that forward, Chair, as I guess an additional recommendation for focus for this committee on page 38.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Manning?
Chair, I just want to support your suggestion that we add those words. I can't remember the exact wording you used, but we add the word criminal damage to that first priority. I take Sergeant, criminal activity. But I take Sergeant Minzick's point, but this is about communicating to the public that it's taken seriously. I know it's not going to change what you do, but I think it sends a quite important message. And I would just say, I'm happy to support Councillor Todd Jones' suggestion, and the other one I would suggest, just one of the views, is number 6, because I don't think sometimes often the work of the council is rather transparent to young people, rather obfuscated from young people, so a priority around protecting young people is an important message.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Sargent?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of priority 1, I think and I agree with you, I think it's not just Fen Road. It's obviously very evident that High Street and Greenham Road, so I would think it's more of that part of East Chester issue that we need to expand into. I certainly support the proposal from Councillor Todd Jones, and as a sort of general comment, some of these seem to be citywide, and obviously I'm keen that it is priorities that local residents raise with us. And I'd like to propose that we support number 4 around drug dealing, because that is an issue that gets raised with me in my area, and I know it gets raised by other residents around the north of the city. So I'm keen to support 1, 4 and Akerman Street.
you. Can I just ask for some clarification, please? Because I think the dwelling burglary is clearly a very important one, and as you said, it's a very important one to you. So I'm just uncertain what the position is if we don't pick number 3, what the likely impact of that's going to have.
As I've said before, this is about adding value to what we already do. So if you were to say, well, we're not going to do number 6, it doesn't mean I'm going to my team are going to ignore safeguarding children or dealing with vulnerability or doing any of that stuff. It would simply be the little bit of extra time that my team has at the end of the week when it's not doing its core function wouldn't be targeted at that issue. So if you're saying, if you don't pick dwelling burglary as an example, I wouldn't expect my team to walk past the burglar on a Tuesday and say, well, Kevin, you said that wasn't a priority, so if it had been a priority, I'd locked him up, but you said it wasn't, so I'm not. It's about what they do with their spare time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you defined it as one of the key priorities, didn't you?
Yeah, so I think what you've got to think is, at the moment, there is a spike in dwelling burglary, and the resource in the southern area is being targeted very heavily at that. And the reality of it is that is being done with the exception of anything else. Basically, every single police officer is out of the station to the detriment of some of the other work we're doing to catch the burglars.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Councillor Saris. We're going to really have to move on because we're running out of time. Councillor Saris.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to support your suggestion of a focus on, however we phrase it, greater attentiveness to criminality in East Chesterton, encompassing the whole of the area, because one sees, I think, from Fen Road through the High Street, by the Methodist Church up to Green End Road, all of this is interconnected. And particularly with respect to drugs dealing, I think there's almost no aspect of criminality that's taking place in our ward which isn't in some sense related to drugs in one way or another. And so I think that what we have here, particularly if one takes an integrated view of it, both geographically and in terms of the type of crime, then we can get somewhere with this.
I would suggest that if we're looking at number 1, is criminality in and around East Chesterton.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's great.
Okay, so number 2 we'd already taken off the list because the antisocial behaviour problems had been sorted out, and that's great at the moment.
Do you know why it stopped?
Do you know why it stopped? Yes, because
they turned
the router off, so the kids couldn't sit outside the building and be on their phones. And also they...
Do you know how hard it was for Ollie to get them to turn their router off?
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah. And then they took away the buggy park top, so they couldn't sit under there and be nice and dry. So that stopped the problem, which is really good. If we could do that everywhere, that'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? Anyway, so then we've got number 3, the burglaries. And then we've got number 4, the county line drug dealing. And then number 6, the safeguarding young people. And number 7 is Aikmond and Darwin Drive. Yeah. So I think we need to vote. So
Could I just say something really quickly?
well, very quickly, because we're in really short time.
I just wanted to have Councillor Missick's assurance that in relation to number 6, sorry,
I'm a sergeant, I get paid to do
I'd
this.
like Councillor, beg pardon, yeah, Sergeant Missick's assurance that number 6 is being dealt with as a Cambridge-wide issue, and that it is a priority for the police, and whether we make it a priority or not, it will be a priority with the police.
Yeah, safeguarding vulnerable people is one of the core functions that we do, and again.
Thank you.
Okay, right. So I think what we need to do then is vote on each one. So the first one is the East. Sorry.
How are we doing this?
Well, we'll vote on each item,
Well, let's
and then yeah, the top 3 will get it. Okay. Yeah. So number 1 is Fen Road. Well, East Chesterton.
So we're having one vote.
We vote 3 times.
Yeah.
3 votes.
3 votes.
Yes, use them wisely. So number 1,
Yes. Unanimous.
Okay, lovely. Number 3.
Yes. Oh no, sorry. I'm just so anxious, it's just I've got to leave.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You can do. Number 4.
Yes.
13. Okay, lovely. Number 5. Okay. Number 6. That's already said. And number 3 for number 6. Sorry. Okay. Well, we'll all vote. I'll vote for that as well because we all want it. But anyway. And number 7 is the Aikman Street down.
11.
Yeah.
The fact that some of us haven't voted for number 6, I'm hoping everybody understands that we're taking on board everything that the sergeant told us, that this is already a police priority, and us not voting for it doesn't mean we suggest it doesn't happen. It means that we are looking at other specific North area priorities, and the rest, as with the dwelling burglary and the safeguarding young people, are almost a given that they are citywide. I think that's right.
Okay.
What the sergeant will discuss, and this is refining based on our priority as an area. That's how it goes.
Okay, so after the count up, number 1's in, number 4, and number 7. Okay?
And could I just say something to you? I'm really sorry, but...
No, sorry. We've really got to get on.
I know, I'm just saying my apologies.
Yeah.
I came up from London specifically for the excitement of this meeting, and I have to leave at this point to return.
Okay.
So sorry.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming. Okay, so the next item is the update on the antisocial behaviour, and then we'll have a break, 10 minutes.
Thank you for the chocolates, Jas.
I'm Sarah Seggles, Safe Communities team. Most of it's actually been covered by Kevin, so we haven't got a great deal to update, you'll be pleased to hear. But we have been working closely with the police on the Fen Road issues. We have been taking complaints from residents, and we've been looking at what we can do to reassure residents and support them with some of the actions that we can take, including looking at the CCTV and looking where we can go with that. Brownsfield, my colleague Lou's been working on Brownsfield, liaising with the community centre there, and as Kevin said, the Wi-Fi was turned off, the buggy canopy taken down, and that seems to have resolved the issue for now, and we're not getting any complaints at the moment. But we'll continue to monitor that. The Aikman Street area, we've also been liaising with residents there, offering reassurances and going to them for updates, and we haven't had any recent complaints, so we're quite happy about that. But obviously we want to keep it on. We're looking at the CCTVs there, and hopefully that will become permanent once the cameras are sorted. So that's basically all I've got to say really now. So, okay.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay then, we're going to have a break now for 10 minutes, everybody. There's mince pies and mulled wine and everything in there for you, as it's Christmas. I like my bell. It's nice, isn't it? Order, yeah. So we're now on agenda item 8 on pages 41 to 68. Where's John? Ah, there you are.
Are you going to sit at the table? Or do you want to...
Yes.
Yes, that's great. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very conscious of time, so I'll try and be brief, if that would assist. So, I think in introducing the report, what I'd say is that I think the benefits of environmental improvements are very well recognised now. Delivering delivery team at the City Council are catching up with the programme delivery of schemes, with recent accomplishments outlined in the appendix to report, Appendix C. And we've been catching up aided by some changes to process in 2015 that have tried to simplify arrangements regarding responsibilities for some of the work. So some of the bids that we previously had for EIP that are about core highways and transport functions are now directed towards the County Council's annual local highways improvement programme. Very briefly, schemes schemes 19 and 20 on Green End Road listed in the appendix are actually no longer needed to be funded through the EIP allocations. Of about £11,000 I think have been allocated to those two projects in total in the past. And this is on the basis of the scheme that the County Council, in fact, Mike Davis, my colleague, is proposing a scheme there to enhance cycling facilities along Green End Road, which will do some fairly considerable landscaping, so there is actually no longer a need for those particular commitments. So the funding for those commitments can actually go back into the pot for considered reallocation to new projects. So in the latest round of applications, we've had a very, very good range of applications coming forward. These are laid out in Appendix A. The funding that we have in the current year and also rephased from previous years as a result of savings made on previous scheme delivery is such that the Area Committee can actually afford to support those all listed in the appendix, and also continue to provide or fund the hanging baskets at the two sites in the North area. I would caution though that we need to remain vigilant and mindful of staffing capacity. So we've potentially got another 21 new projects to add to the list here for the North area. Now obviously the team that we have delivering open space projects at the City Council has limited capacity. We have to cover the whole city in terms of environmental improvements. I think overall in the round across all four areas this year there are between 40 and 50 new schemes, so that's quite a heavy workload to take on. So whilst I'm quite happy with the committee allocating all of those projects to the work programme, I would just caution in terms of expectations that we will try to deliver those within 12 months. Hopefully they'll be more straightforward to deliver now that we've reduced some of those dependencies through the process changes. And also to say that there is a review ongoing for EIPs as well as other spending areas at the Council to ensure that we're achieving good value from our investments. One particular issue I would flag, and just catching Councillor Price's eye there, is that there was a previous commitment given to support a project at Craisty Court, which didn't move forward and, as I understand, was abandoned. I'm not sure that was ever formally abandoned by Area Committee. So there would now appear to be renewed appetite to try and achieve something there. So what I've allowed for in the funding breakdown that I've briefly alluded to in the report is to continue to meet the existing commitment of £5,000 for that particular project and actually allocate a further £5,000. So I think with a working budget of around £10,000, we should be able to achieve something worthwhile there. So Chair, I think at that point, I'd happily defer to any questions. I'm not sure whether it might be useful to sort of group these together in terms of previous schemes, new scheme applications, or any of the wording in the report.
Okay, I've got one gentleman who's put in a question which was the open forum, but I said hang on to it until you arrived. And it's Matthew.
Thanks. Hi, yes, thank you. Just asking, well, I want to make a comment regarding item or number N7, which is the Lees Road, Highworth Avenue cycle route, and which is probably one of my favorite cycle routes because it's near my home. It's a very nice alternative route to Arbery Road, a very dangerous, you can avoid all the dangerous driving and speeding on Arbery Road and Milton Road Junction by using this cut through. It's also very nice because it's planters and it's very pleasantly landscaped, though I do recognize that it could use repair and refurbishment, which is certainly appreciated. But there has been now talk of putting up additional obstructions because of motorcycle or moped users also going through this route, which is on the carriageway, I might add. And the problem here is that any kind of physical obstruction that gets put there will block legitimate users. It will impede them, and it has the potential for causing injury to a legitimate user, such as people riding tricycles or trailers. As this is close to a school, this is a very popular school route. And so I would ask that this item be amended to categorically rule out any physical measures to stop motorcycles. The only way to really prevent motorcycles from using, or motorbikes from using this, is to use enforcement measures such as CCTV cameras or an officer who stops people who go through there. So I would just like to rule out physical measures at this point, because it would spoil what was otherwise a very safe, very quiet and pleasant cycle route. Thank you.
Councillor Sargent?
Yes, I understand Matthew's concerns here, and obviously John Richards has pointed out it won't be an easy thing to do, but it is a major issue that residents raise with us, and of course it doesn't just impact that cut through, it's throughout the whole estate, and actually facilitate some of the issues that we had earlier on in terms of aggressive motorcycling around the north of the city. It may not be achievable, but I think we should see what we can achieve to discourage motorcycles. It may not actually be at this point, but certainly using that as a cut-through is a major issue for local residents, and we need to see if we can do something with it. I'm sure within the budget of 4,000 we're not going to be able to do very much, but certainly the current planters, etc., are in a poor state, and that will be the first priority. And if we can do anything for motorcyclists, then so much the better.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and I'm grateful for John for suggesting some extra money to the project in Craister Court that seems to have been abandoned, but I don't think any of us are really quite sure why. If I remember rightly, part of the proposals there, which essentially residents wanted, and I thought we'd asked for, removal of all the massively overgrown planting in the middle there, and just replace it with grass, and then sort of redo the footpath, which was sort of just paving slabs around it. And if I remember rightly, I think the proposal somewhere included an outdoor barbecue, which many of the residents kicked off about and said they didn't want. And I think that might be the reason why the scheme sort of died, because the residents didn't want an outdoor barbecue. However, I have, as I do regularly, knocked on the doors in that area and spoken to the residents in that area, and once we knocked on one door, they came out of several other doors and wanted to talk to us, me and fellow ward councillors, about this. When is this happening? Why hasn't it happened before? So, yes, I want to see that continuing forward, just simply turning it to grass.
Thank you. Councillor Manning?
Yeah, I just wanted to support Councillor Sargent's position. It's Christmas, isn't it? So spirit of cross-party cooperation. I take the point, obviously, about physical barriers being problematic for larger cycles, but I think there's this kind of balance of risks here, and I've been made aware since I've become, my division's expanded to include that area, of the problems they had before there were physical measures in there, so I wouldn't want to see it ruled out. I think it's worth sort of saying to the officer that we should try and, if we are going to be physical measures, we try and build in physical measures that don't impact larger cycles. The only one I wanted to comment on was N9. I think that's probably something that the management, I declared interest. I used to live at the V, and I used to be a director of the management company there. I think it's probably something that the management company should look at, partly because it was discussed numerous times, and not all residents actually necessarily want that facility. Some do, some don't. So I think it would be something that would be most appropriately dealt with by the management company, and they'd be able to fund it.
Mr. Taylor?
Thank you. Number 7 on your progress report is on the East Chesterton Haley £4,000 for a bench and 2 trees. I just want to say that the 2 trees that have gone in there have failed. So we've got a tree twig that's snapped off, and the tree supports that are empty are left. So maybe get rid of what's there at the moment and put it back as it was, or if you could get some replacement trees in there perhaps. I know your report mentions a September deadline. It's quite hard to find that because the web page mentions a deadline in February, and it's only on the form itself that you actually find that there was a September deadline. I don't think I've ever been able to find one of these things that's actually open for applications. So why not have it open for applications all the time? I understand you've got to have an occasional point at which you review the application, but why not have it open all the time so we can, rather than trying to get people to spot this narrow period of time when we can actually submit something?
Okay, George, answer.
Chair, I'm certainly happy to take on board the point about trees having failed. I mean, we're in the point now where our horticulture team are actually undertaking their winter planting programme. So what they normally try and do is replace any trees that have been lost during that period, so we can check what the position is with those. In respect of application window, I think it is important, just from a resources point of view, to have an application window on an annual basis. What we do is we don't send out invitations to the general public. We do it through elected city councillors, with county councillors being copied in, and that's the way we encourage this to come forward. So I don't see a need to change that at the moment, but as I say, I'll more than happily take it on board as a comment and suggestion in the context of the review that's going on to ensure that EIPs remain focused on the needs of areas.
Lovely. Thank you very much, John. Okay, is there no more questions? Go on. Oh, sorry, Michael.
It would be helpful if notice of opening the season for applications was actually put into the previous area committee round, so that those of us who have an interest are aware of it happening and can give a nudge to our local councillors if that's the way it has to go through. Most of us have, we have short memories and forget it happens every year. That's that one. The other one I want to point attention to is N21, the failed trees in Chesterton High Street. They're either side of the cul-de-sac which accesses my house. They actually died, and they weren't, unlike one tree further along, vandalised or deliberately poisoned. That corner actually has an enormous amount of services underneath the ground. When they replaced the telegraph pole, they could only find one small area of about 1 square foot where they could put it, because there are gas, electricity, water, and the electricity is high tension as well as the ordinary supplies. So I think that's where I would suggest that forget about the pits, actually just tidy up those 2 corners, because I think the other one would probably get demolished by someone trying to park in the nearby parking bay, which is a very small and narrow one anyway. But the trees actually did die shortly after being planted. And I discovered when this chap was trying to find a place to put his telegraph pole that the thing actually has so much servicing on that corner that there's very little room for a reasonable sized pit for allowing standard tree development. And the kind of trees that you're hoping them to go into would probably disrupt the services as well.
Chair, if I may just respond to those 2 points, what I would do is encourage all councillors almost to have a shopping list or a wish list of potential environment improvements to put forward when the invitation round opens. That seems to work fairly well in most areas. On the second point, certainly establishing trees that are going to grow to maturity in hard landscapes is a very challenging thing to do, but there are ways and means that this can be achieved, both in terms of the species of tree, but also the engineering work that's undertaken to try and provide a suitable growing medium. And if we can do that in the right way, of course, we can avoid any further damage that a tree might cause to other infrastructure that might be in the way. Now, this bid's application is quite an interesting one in that it's not come forward from a council, but has come forward from the Streets and Open Spaces team, and it's in relation to again the winter tree planting programme that the tree team have. But they've identified in this particular instance that some work is needed to those tree pits in order to try and ensure that replacement trees actually have a chance of surviving. So what I've tried to do there is include a provisional sum to allow some improvement work to those tree pits. It's very, very provisional at this stage in that we won't know quite what work is needed until we actually commence the work. But there certainly are ways and means now whereby crating systems can be established underneath the ground to allow roots to spread in a sustainable and healthy way, searching out in air and water, which is effectively why tree roots spread. And we can encourage them to spread in the direction that's healthy and hopefully not diving into sewage pipes and all sorts of other things in search of water. So at this stage, as I say, it's a provisional sum, but we are fairly confident that we should be able to achieve something there.
Okay, thanks very much, John. Okay, can we now go to the recommendations on page 39 of agenda item 8? The North Area Committee is recommended to, number 1, note progress and delays where experienced in delivery of the identified programme of projects since 2011-12. 2, support the allocation of 6,616 in 2017-18 towards the provisions of 40 summer hanging baskets in Cheston High Street and Camkin Road. Number 3, determine whether to continue to pursue these projects that have proven problematic as listed in paragraph 5.4 and Appendix C. Number 4, to determine whether to continue with the projects to improve the environment within Caister Court. Consider the allocation of remaining EIP funding available for 2017-18 to further project applications. Number 6, to approve these projects selected for implementation subject to them being viable, obtaining consents as necessary, positive consultation and final approval by Capital Programme Board and Ward Councillors where required. Please can I have a show of hands for the recommendations? Unanimous? Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. If I could
Nice
just
to see
check,
you.
so item 3, we're determining to reallocate that funding for the Green and Road projects back into the budget.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And we're doing Facebook call.
And we're doing 5,000.
Doing Facebook call. Thank you.
Okay, we now go on to agenda item number 9. Mike Davis, Cambridge County Council. Just to let you know, we are really getting tight on time now.
Sorry,
You sure you're not looking at something else?
Jerry, don't know if you might put it be Star Wars. Don't know if you might put it Star Wars. Yeah, I want to watch the film. Start with we're going tomorrow. No. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, you won't be able to see the pictures then. Just me. So I'm Mike Davis, I work for Cambridgeshire County Council and I lead on cycling projects. We also deliver projects for the Greater Cambridge Partnership, formerly known as City Deal. So I'm just going to talk about 4 projects which are ongoing in the north of the city. Firstly, the Abbey Chesterton Bridge. So planning consent was obtained in February this year for the new bridge. We're currently in the process of discharging the pre-commencement planning conditions, of which there's about 18, twice as many as the new station. It's proved fairly challenging. It is a difficult site. It's next to a railway line. It's in a flood risk area. It's close to very sensitive sites. So there's a lot of detail in those submissions that we're submitting. Again, I can't really show you this, but the way the bridge lands on the north side, it leaves the pillbox in place. If you can picture the site, a ramp wraps around a triangle of land and then it lands on the towpath. On the other side of the river, there'll be a new embankment built alongside the railway line, and that will take you from bridge level down onto the path next to the River Cam. We're also improving the jetty, the timber jetty which is under the bridge. We're not actually able to widen the jetty directly under the bridge because there is a limit on navigation on the river. But the critical element is that we are widening the approaches to that jetty, so as you actually come to the narrow section, you will actually have visibility through the section, which you currently haven't got. So it'll be much wider on the approaches. It'll be a whole new steel structure rather than the existing timber structure. For more details and to actually see some of the pictures, we have a local liaison forum which is open to everybody. It's on the 10th of January, 6 till 7:30 at Barnwell Baptist Church, which is in Howard Road. So if you'd like to find out more about the Chisholm Trail and the Abbey Chesterton Bridge, please do come to that, because we've got a whole hour and a half just to talk about that project, or those 2 projects. On to Arbury Road. The first phase of Arbury Road was completed in summer 2016. That was funded through Section 106 funding. The next phase, we call it 2A, is on site at the moment. This is funded by Greater Cambridge Partnership, and what it's looking to do is to put raised red lanes on both sides of the road, 1.9 metres wide, to narrow down the road to try and encourage slower speeds and make it feel much more like a 20-mile-an-hour zone. And we're also looking to remove the mini roundabouts. They'll be replaced with standard T-junctions, but they'll be raised junctions. So quite a big change there. When we've finished section 2A, which ends in Mere Way, we'll then be continuing down just beyond North Cambridge Academy, and we're then, once that's on the ground, we're then going to start consultations towards what we call phase 3. That's the fairly controversial section where you've got parked cars. So clearly we need to have quite a thorough consultation there to find out what people's needs are in terms of parking, who's got off-street parking, who could possibly convert their frontage to off-street parking, what sort of parking is available in the side streets. But ultimately, it's going to be a political decision to make a judgment about that parking. Will it need to be there all day? Could it be just overnight parking? How important is it to have cycle lanes? How important is the issue of cycle safety? So it's ultimately a political decision, but we'll be doing a consultation to sort of gather the information to inform that decision. Green End Road, we've completed the first phase of Green End Road, other than the planting of a couple of trees and the double yellow lines. They'll be coming soon. The next phase we're looking at is Milton Road to Nuffield Road, and this is fairly rare within the city. We've actually got a massively wide section of road. So we are actually able to retain parking on both sides of the road, retain wide footways, to put in segregated cycle lanes, 2 metres wide, which are actually segregated between the carriageway with brand new grass verge with new trees in it. So it is rare that we have this kind of width, but where we've got this sort of width, we will always try and provide segregation to give really safe facilities for people. The cyclists and the pedestrians will have priority over the side roads as well. The carriageway will be narrowed again to try and get more of a feel of a 20-mile-an-hour zone, which is what it currently is. We'll also be improving some of the pedestrian crossings in the area, generally making it feel much safer to walk and cycle, lots of new trees, and making it feel much more like a 20-mile-an-hour zone. So I think it will be a really good project. The final section is Nuffield Road. We've done a lot of consultation on this. We've looked into lots of issues around lay-bys, walls and trees. All of these are very important to local residents. So we've actually come in with a fairly minimal scheme there because we're not able to move the wall, get rid of any of the trees or to touch the lay-by. So that actual section will end up much more like phase 1, which is the planed out and inlaid red cycle lanes. That takes me on to the final scheme, which is Waterbeach Greenway. A colleague of mine came to your meeting in July. We've done a consultation looking at how we take people from Cambridge North Station out to Waterbeach. There's going to be a massive development at Waterbeach. There's already an application in for 6,500 new homes. It's going to be 10,000 homes in the end. It's very much being designed around trying to get a lot of people walking and cycling within the development. And clearly, we don't want all 10,000 of those homes to drive into Cambridge every day. So we're looking at the provision of what we're calling a greenway. This is a route for pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders. The favoured route looks to probably be alongside the railway line. There's a lot of sensitivities about touching the towpath, certainly with lots of extra cyclists. So we're looking to see if we can get a brand new route alongside the railway line. This is very much reflected in the Sport Lakes application, which went in some years ago now. There's a new cycle route in that. So we've been working with the Sport Lakes people, and this will be a brand new route, we hope, all the way to Waterbeach to encourage a lot of the new residents there to cycle to the station, the science park and onwards into the rest of Cambridge. And of course that then links into the Chisholm Trail and the wider cycle network. So it is quite an important project. We've got more consultation coming up on that in the new year. That's about it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike. Okay, I have one gentleman who had a question in the open forum. Owen Dunn.
So, thank you for the report. I have to say I'm very disappointed by the Nuffield Road proposals, which will just, it looks to be, as you say, it's very minimal. I think, well, I would like to know why we have ended up with such a poor proposal when other things, when initially it had a segregated cycleway on it, which is clearly going to be safer in the presence of schools and industrial traffic to the industrial estate round the back.
Sorry, which section are you talking about?
From Green End Road along Nuffield Road.
Well, it's really, I mean, we've done a lot of consultation. A lot of people wanted to retain the wall between the road and the housing estate. There's a lot of mature trees there, and local councillors had fought very hard to get a lay-by outside the school. I think that's well used for lots of different purposes. I think, you know, various children get dropped off there and school buses and things like that. So we looked at a lot of different options over a long period of time, but in the end we couldn't really come up with something that addressed all of those local concerns. That's not to say, as that area gets busier, I'm sure there's going to be changes in that area, probably with Ridgeons and others moving out and more residential stuff coming in future years. That's not to say what we're doing couldn't be changed again in future. But, you know, if you have got some ideas, you know, it'd be interesting to hear them.
I mean, basically, the people I've spoken to, you know, I live on Maitland Avenue, people I've spoken to basically do not let their kids travel to school on their own because it is so dangerous along that road. So I think we need more than the bare minimum of cycle facilities there. But obviously, as you say, you know, this is partly a political decision, but, you know, any ideas for the future, you know, I would continue to press for segregated facilities.
I think just to finally say, what we're doing is fairly minimalistic, so it wouldn't stop something else happening in future. So I think the door is open still for something else.
Okay, I'll just say something on that as well. We did, there was a consultation went round, I think a couple went round. Also, we asked residents of Maitland and Mortlock what they thought about the wall coming down and everything, and most residents there wanted everything to be kept the same because that's their community behind that wall. And we didn't want the lay-by moved because they wanted to move it across the road, which would have meant all children would have been dropped across the road, then have to cross the main road where the lorries from Ridgeons and everyone was coming through. So there was a lot of work done on it, and this is the outcome of it. Anyway, is there any more questions? Okay, Ian?
So I've got to come on this point, because obviously I was formerly the county councillor for East Chester for 7 years, and when I talked to residents down that stretch of road, there was a mix of opinions about that wall. So I'd perhaps just invite, what I wanted to see happen was a formal council consultation, or Great City Deal, Great Cambridge Partnership consultation, asking residents formally what they thought. As I understand it, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I was told by officers that that was stopped by a combination of councillors Bird and Price. So I'd like you to confirm whether that's true or not. You know,
Happy to in a minute.
Okay. So I just fundamentally disagree. We should have been asking residents, giving them both options formally, which we haven't done.
We did.
So we haven't.
Nothing to do with you.
Councillor Price.
Nothing to do with you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, if you want to put it down to representation from Councillors Bird and Price, that's fine with me. As Councillor Bird has said, we went out and knocked on doors and spoke to residents in the area specifically, and we made sure we spoke to as many as we could about that wall. That wall forms part of that estate. It stopped people that lived in the flats near that wall used the green space outside the front as their garden in the summer because they don't have gardens. They wanted to maintain their privacy. That wall belongs to City Homes, which is in my portfolio as Executive Councillor for Housing on the City Council. Housing officers were also opposed to that wall being removed, as they are the people that talk to residents more often than the rest of us. So I am perfectly happy, if you want to blame me for saving residents from losing the wall that they saw as the wall that protects then and stops their estate being a cut through for everybody once that wall was removed.
And I'll agree with what Councillor Price says, and I don't mind having the blame either, because I know we went out there on the coldest nights ever last year. So, Councillor Austin?
Yeah. So I'm just coming at this from a slightly different angle, but I'm very aware that schools are now being very much encouraged to stop people driving to school to drop off children. And it seems that retaining a lay-by near a school is doing exactly the opposite. So I just wonder what consultation actually took place with the school and how the county councillors can then actually ensure that they're supporting the schools in trying to meet the objectives that they're being set.
Okay, just quickly, we've got to be out of here in 10 minutes and we've still got another item to go through. So we need to move on. But I will say a lot of consultation was done, and we did speak to parents outside the schools as well. That school is out of the way of a lot of people, and a lot of people do drive, I know, and we do try and stop it. But we tried everything. We looked at different ways of doing this scheme, and this was the only safest scheme going at the time. So anyway, I think we'll stop there on this one and go on to the next agenda item. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Stephen. We've got Stephen Kelly. He's going to do a quick discussion about the Cambridge North Fringe East.
Thank you very much. Hope people can hear me. Given the IT issues, I have I shall stand away from that. I have a presentation which I will circulate via the council services to you tomorrow. Within the 9 minutes that I have left, I think it's probably helpful just to introduce the item, allow you to see the presentation for yourselves, which I've just been customising at the top of my laptop side to make it more self-explanatory for users. And then perhaps we might need to come back again or think about the right avenue for engaging with you. Two key issues perhaps to get across. There are two threads, all of you will be familiar with where I'm talking about in terms of the water treatment works and the area surrounding that. That area has been a long-term area for change in planning policy documents going back many years, and in 2014 or so the council began work on something called an area action plan. That area action plan was looking at options for its future redevelopment. One of those options involved the relocation of the treatment works, and there was a lot of discussion around that time. Why are we talking about it now? Through recent government announcements around grants available to facilitate the delivery of whether in terms of regeneration or growth or housing delivery, it in a sense is not important, but effectively through a government grant scheme called the Housing Infrastructure Fund, the councils of Cambridge City Council, but with the support of South Cambridgeshire District Council, have submitted a bid through the combined authority for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough for £193 million to facilitate the relocation, give or take, to facilitate the relocation of that water treatment works. There are two threads therefore. I am the Joint Director of Planning, and I am responsible for both the local plan policy for the area and the area action plan, which some of you may well have participated in the past. My colleague on the City Council, Fiona Bryant, is responsible for that bid and for indeed engaging with any development programme that comes out of it. So in the presentation that you sadly can't see in the 7 minutes or so that we have left, you will see that we talk about a substantive opportunity to deliver growth, both homes and jobs, but also infrastructure, affordable homes, the kind of community infrastructure such as is necessary. There are two sides to that presentation, as I say. One is around, there is a planning process that we are going to want to talk to you about if that bid is successful, particularly if that bid is successful, because the scale of ambition that the bid promoters, and my colleague, there's a wall between us effectively, but my colleague Fiona Bryant will be promoting on behalf of the City Council and the other primary landowners, is for quite substantial quantums of new housing and employment space. Now, I've been in the game long enough to know that starting to talk about potentially thousands of additional homes in an area where in the peak hours is virtually gridlocked in terms of traffic is just one of the many challenges that we're going to face and one of the core issues that underpins, I think the gentleman before me was talking about Water Beach. We know the science parks have aspirations for further growth and so on. The job of the planning policy process will be to try and determine what is appropriate and what can be achieved through all sorts of mechanisms or transport propositions, and that is a process that is inclusive, I would say this. It will require consultation on planning policy, and that planning policy will then be used to form the basis for planning decisions on planning applications that may well come out from my colleague on the other side of, you have to imagine, this virtual colleague here, but the promotion side, effectively, of the council as landowner alongside Anglian Water and other landowners. So probably, given that there may well be some immediate questions that come out from that, I'll stop there and allow five minutes for questions. But please look at the presentation. Please look at the components of that. And then perhaps let's think about how we can engage further on that going forwards.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Any questions? No? Oh, yes.
So my main interest is Milton Road, and that's got a Greater Cambridge Partnership project on it, and obviously this new work will affect that a lot. Are you doing any work with the Greater Cambridge Partnership to see how that bill will affect the Milton Road and their plans for that?
Absolutely. I mean, to be clear, the Planning Authority and the Greater Cambridge Partnership work very closely because clearly the infrastructure that they are promoting and delivering and funding is related to the growth that the planning authorities have previously set through the local plans. In respect to the point that you raise about, are we going to waste our time doing one project and then have to come back to it again? Well, obviously we're mindful of the measures that are proposed to kind of reassign road space and bring forward additional public transport and walking and cycling capabilities on Milton Road. Any proposal for Cambridge Northern Fringe East, and equally the aspirations that exist in the science parks for further growth and upstream the growth of Water Beach, is requiring us to think with the County Council, with the Greater Cambridge Partnership, and even with the combined authority about the very large transport implications that arise as a consequence. So yes, there is going to need to be a kind of radical rethink about parking strategies and things like that on sites like that. There's quite a lot of parking on Cambridge Science Park. We're very live to the fact that delivering lots of homes with lots of parking spaces is not going to help Milton Road residents or indeed the success of schemes designed to get people out of their cars. So we're fully aware of the fact that we will need thinking and working with yourselves, but also those other agencies, to reset aspirations for things like car use on any further development. That's to make the best use of the investments that are already happening right now, but also as necessary to try and capitalise upon that investment with probably future schemes and measures.
Okay, we've got 2 minutes. So Claire and then Ian. You've got 1 minute each.
Catherine, really quick, you know, one of the aspirations for someone like Cambridge Northern Peace is clearly to increase the level of what many call affordable and I would say social housing. But people use viability assessments all the time. There's been some work done, I gather, on viability assessments, but it seems to me Cambridge is way behind the trend. If you look at the Mayor of London, if you look at all the others when they're doing it, because we apparently are still reliant on the SPD for affordable housing and on our commitment to keep things confidential. So very quickly, I wondered if you were able to say at what stage any new development on viability assessments and how we can look at them better and challenge developers more.
Right, but very briefly, my previous role before I've been here 18 months was involved working across London with the other, I was Director of Planning of the London Borough, was working on exactly that point with all of the London councils ahead of the Mayor, in fact, at that point, trying to understand the best way of getting a consistent approach to viability. To be fair to Cambridge, having come here, you have historically achieved better affordable housing outcomes than almost any London borough. So we need to keep that in mind. There are, and the methodologies that we have used and the experts that we have used since I've been here to do those viability assessments are effectively the very same experts that London is using. We've committed to review the Affordable Housing SPD and indeed the Section 106 SPD precisely to create a more kind of coherent and transparent process. I can't do that overnight, but it is something that we plan for the year ahead.
Thank you.
Ian, last one.
So I was going to say, in terms of the sewerage works move, I think I probably speak for a lot of people in this room, probably all the Chester councillors certainly. Anything that we can do to get an alternative road route out of the detached area of Fen Road as part of the sewage works and the related developments, please, please, please.
Okay. Everyone happy? Okay, I think, Stephen, you may be coming back in our next meeting, won't you?
Can I go earlier on the agenda?
Yeah, that'll be the 1st of March. And if anybody wants to know the other dates for next year, we've got the 21st of June, the 13th of September, and the 13th of December. So they're the dates for the next year.
It's a good venue here.
Huh?
It's a good venue here. Better than Chesterton.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you everybody and have a good Christmas. See you in the new year.
So I would have asked a question of Mr Davis, the cycling officer, if I'd have been able to, about the planning conditions and all the details of the Chisholm Trail bridge and the pass. If I get the opportunity to ask him now, I will do so on the way out if he's got some time. So overall, I think it was really worth coming out to the North Area Committee this evening. A relatively small achievement, but I did manage to get the City Council to say that they will go and have a look at the trees on the Hailing Way, which have failed, and maybe replace them this winter, which will be excellent. When I came to the end of the meeting, I spoke on Fen Road and encouraged councillors, so something I've been lobbying on now for months really, to increase what they're asking the police to do rather than dealing with antisocial behaviour, ask them to deal with the serious criminal behaviour, and councillors did that this evening, so that was a big success. A number of people came up to me at the end of the meeting to thank me for the work that the lobbying that I've been doing on that, which is obviously excellent. Unfortunately, I also was approached by one of the councillors, Councillor Manning, after the meeting, and he complained about my approach to filming meetings and said, I think his suggestion was that I was being irresponsible in the way that I filmed some meetings in Cambridge. And he did that actually in the presence of other members of the public, and he suggested that I'd inappropriately filmed children when it wasn't appropriate to do so. I asked him to retract that comment, and I don't think that he did. Obviously, it's really difficult to film council meetings. You get people who object, and councillors often are very sensitive to reports. I think they perhaps find it difficult to operate in the public glare, and when people can look back and see the decisions that they've made. So obviously that was quite upsetting to have that comment from Councillor Manning, but overall
overall, I think it's been a really successful evening. I dealt with the people who asked not to be filmed when they were making their representations on the policing items by not filming them, but I did record the audio. There was a bit of an unclear request by the chair. The chair didn't actually mention, so just said, anyway, what I did was I continued to record the audio, and my current plan is to continue to publish. I don't think I have any images which connect the people who are making the representations. And I made a representation on Fen Road publicly. People know who I am. I understand, though, this is something I said to those who were making the request not to be filmed, is that I would do more to personally lobby to be more of an activist and challenge what's going on Fen Road if I felt it was safer to do so. I do understand the fear that people have that they may well be sort of suffer physical violent crime because they are calling for that area of Cambridge to be made safer. And it was particularly notable that the City Council said that they put a CCTV camera up on Fen Road and it's been destroyed, and they are not keen to put a new one back up because they think that will be destroyed too. So that really clearly indicates the level of a problem that we've got in that. And I would say, agree with some of the people, members of the public who spoke in the meeting, it's an increasingly lawless area of the city and councillors really need to act, and hopefully they've taken the first step in doing so today.